Hi, everyone. Welcome to the post-screening Q&A of Anatomy of Time, which is also in the Asian Film competition at the 32nd Singapore International Film Festival. I'm Singapore filmmaker Tan Bee Thiam, and I'll be moderating this session. And we are very happy to have with us today the writer and director of the film, Jakrawal Nilthamrong. A very big congratulations as well, right, on your winning the grand prize of Best Film at Tokyo Filmex just a few days ago. And I certainly would hope that you will win something as well tomorrow at the Singapore International Film Festival. So I think for a start, perhaps, you've done quite a number of things, right? Apart from, I think, your own film, and even for your own film, you are also playing different roles. So maybe you would like to introduce yourself to our audience, Jakrawal?
Yes, yes, you are right. I do things here and there, like I teach in university, and I also a filmmaker, and also doing some art project. So yeah, it's here and there, but it's something related to the moving image. Yeah.
And I would think that, you've been working on film for quite a number of years, for more than a decade, and you did your MFA in Chicago, right, as well. So I'm interested, to find out, for this film, Anatomy of Time, which is your second film, you are the writer-director, whereas for the previous film, Vanishing Point, you almost take on every other role, right? You direct, you write, you edit. But for this film, you're just focusing on directing and writing. Can you perhaps share with us, how did this film comes about and your writing process, right, for a start?
Yeah, Vanishing Point is more kind of experimental work. If you guys got a chance to see it, it's kind of different approach comparing to Anatomy of Time. With the Anatomy of Time, I start this project by we want to make this film to be different. First of all, I want to go into the kind of realism direction. So everything in the films it's towards to that area. So it's no superstitious, no surrealism, that kind of thing. But we try to explore in the realm of the realism filmmaking. So that also implied to the writing process, and also the kind of acting workshop with the actors, that they have to do certain kind of workshop, just like kind of method acting workshop. So it's pretty much like I try to challenge myself, because it's not something that I feel familiar with. So yeah, I think that it's a whole point that I try to challenge myself. Yeah.
Why this fascination with realism?
Well, I think because of the subject matter, because the inspiration of this film come from my parents. So the first film I dedicated to my father, and for this film I dedicate to my mother. And I try to make this film different from the previous one. And the writing is kind of pretty straightforward. It's like like normal script writing, which is something that I'm not usually do, because my background is from experimental filmmaker. So the writing process becomes like kind of really interesting and really challenging experience for me. And it starts from that, from the inspiration from the story of my mother, and I start to imagine, like how my parents got how they met, and why they become a couple, and that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that your one of your first inspiration for the film is realism, because I think people who have watched the film, including myself, we are actually taken by the imagined, world, and the path that you have taken, which is different from what is real, right? And I think in a number of interviews, you have also mentioned that it is from, I think, the memories of your parents, rather than and that you clarify that it is actually not them. So I'm just curious to understand, like at what point, and at which part of the writing, would you allow them to go off a tangent, right, from the source? Yeah.
Oh, it's just like I said, it's just only inspiration. So the character in the film is completely different from the real person, and I wouldn't try to compare the character with my real mom, because it's, in the film it's completely a different person, and I think the writing process start with the inspiration of my mom, like her life that I have seen since I was a child, and I grew up and see how she's into with her, marriage life, and I start to ask question why she arrived to this point. So that I can come back to, like, her old photos, that kind of thing, and then I start to imagine what if she, falling in love with other guys, and her life would be different, and what would happen in the past, how she met my father.
Yeah. So one of the things which I think I am very impressed by, right, although it is called Anatomy of Time, but I'm actually very impressed by the spaces, in the film. And by spaces, I think I meant, I think both the house, but also I think the rural areas, the forests, the the slope and hill, or with like the bees, and the bamboo kind of structures. Are those constructed, or are those scouted, as a location?
Yeah, the honey hunter scenes is quite challenging, because it's almost like a documentary, because we have to wait for like certain months to be able to go there, and they have a big like beehive on just off the cliff, and then we can shot that particular scene. So that's one part of the film that I try to keep it just like the realism approaching. And also with the birth of the dog, the puppies, we have to wait for the dogs, get pregnant, and wait for like certain month until that we can shoot them when she delivery the puppies. So yeah, it's on the script. It's all scripted, but we have to find a way to make the thing on the script happen according to this. Yeah.
Yeah, but the dog didn't really die, right?
Yeah, it's no, that she's not. It's not dead. It's they just put like a sleeping pills or something, and then she wakes up.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I can certainly see the documentary aspect, to the film, in terms of, I think, documenting the spaces, as well as, I think, in terms of the performance, right? There's a certain kind of realism in terms of us, waiting, and for there to be enough time for the characters to care, right, for one another. Yeah, and I mean, you've mentioned that this is the first time that you have written, right, seriously a script. But he has done such a great job, right, in terms of winning, I think, quite a number of awards in Berlin, Huber Ball's Fund in Rotterdam, and then after that as well in Singapore, getting a grant from here. So did it surprise you, like, or was it really actually all the while your strength? Yeah.
Well, I don't really know because well I think the interesting part of this project is like I write from what I know, and it's kind of surprised me a little bit that the project touched some certain people, especially like like when we pitched the story in Cannes, and some like European, most are like women, and they're like 40 or 50 or 60, like come and talk to me that they, when you look at their eyes, that they really like the project. And it's especially for this group of audience that they love the story. So I think that this is kind of the universal thing that the films connect to. I don't say funding, but most of the audience.
Yeah, but I think it's also an achievement to be able to get an audience as well as co-producers and investors to be with you right from a script stage. Yeah, and I had a chance to actually read the script before, and I think it's really written very beautifully. So yeah, so I think that's why I think a lot of people were really anticipating this film when it's out, and I think it's done so well right since it premiered at Venice. So congratulations. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. My second question is relating a bit to some of the things that I saw in the film. And that is I noticed that you are very deliberate in what you reveal and what you hide. An example would be the cremation scene. You shot it in such a way that we don't really know who is being cremated. Is it a person or is it a dog? Because, it happened almost at around the same time, and it was left, vague. And that was just one example. So can you share, this tension, as you write and as you direct, what to show and what to hide? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That also already in the script, like in that particular part of the story. But when I remember when I was edit the film with my editor, he's tried to coming back to me and asking me like, what is the essence of the movie? What's your director statement of the film? So we kind of discussing about this, like, even more than like, watching the footage. So I think this has come to the conclusion that why we start the film with death and end with death. It's because like I think it's about the meaning of the title of the movie that we call Anatomy of Time, because time is actually something that we not really related when we alive. No, I'm sorry, I mean death. Because death is not an event in our life, right? We learn what's death from somebody else's death, but not our own death. So for me, time is kind of been showing in many areas, like be it like a 4-dimensional in physics, and being in movie in so many forms. But in this film, I try to say that time, or Anatomy of Time, find its own meaning in death. So we start with death and we end with death, so the story can come back and to live again. So I think this kind of combination, like at the beginning that we start the film with the idea of realism, but at the editing process become like it's almost like non-linear because of the concept of time.
Yeah. In fact, initially I see it as some people might see it as you going backward, forward, like a flashback or something, right? Because there's two very distinct time period, but it also feels to me like it is very circular, in its form rather than linear, or non-linear. Yeah. So when you mentioned about like life, death, birth, and how it then goes somewhere else, right? Especially I think in the spaces of there's real spaces, there's imagined spaces, there is landscape, and there's dreamscape, right? So as it moves to different spaces as well, it allows, I think, different kind of time and different kind of rhythm, right? To breathe. And so I think that was one of the things which I really appreciated in the film. You've mentioned about how this film is also about nature, right? I think not just nature in its forests, mountains, sea, but also I think the nature of existence, being, suffering. And so there was also a particular scene between the father and the daughter, right, talking about karma and nirvana. How did you construct this scene, and to inform us about, I think, time, which is reflected in the title, as well as I think how we keep revisiting, right, what has happened to the main character.
Yeah, I wrote that particular scene, that particular monologue by the father, I think like in an early version of the script, and it's survived until the final cut. I think because that particular scene or monologue is probably the core of the film, and I wrote that during the time that I was a monk, a Buddhist monk in the forest monastery, and I think I was trying to capture what I saw at that moment. It's like you stay in a forest, it's completely quiet, and you can start watching things like the leaf falls, and just one leaf fall on the ground, and because of the quietness, it's become like a bomb in your area. So I try to deliver that kind of inspiration or experience into that film, and it also, because of that experience, it makes me become interested in other religions too. Because I start this film by looking at my life, the life of my mother, and then I try to find the answer from the religion perspective. But at the end, it's like I can find answer from every religion's perspective too, and the movie keep growing from that.
So I think let's talk about, I think, the response that you've got with the film, I think from audiences, who have seen it internationally. How was it like? Have you attended any of these screenings or any of the Q&A with like live audiences?
Well, I only did online, and I mean, unfortunately, so I really don't know the response like directly from the audience. But I just got it. Like the impression from the critics, just like the Q&A like this, and I think like for example, like one Q&A that I did with I think a Polish a magazine. He was like he just go on and asking about films like this, and what's that come from, what's the meaning of this and that. And at some point, he just shared to me that, like 2 weeks ago, he just called his mom and saying he's like really grateful for her that she left his father. I was like, okay, that's wonderful news that you're sharing to me, and I start to feel that the film is touching people at some certain level. That's why he shared this to me. So I think that's a wonderful feedback for me.
And I was wondering also, I think one of the things that you use to, I think, capture the passing of time is also the anatomy, right? The body, the face, right? The wrinkles, and the drunkenness, right? Of the people after a certain time, lying in bed for a long time. So how do you, so you mentioned that it is difficult to find actors, especially I think in Asia, not just Thailand, right? For this kind of roles. How long do you take, for casting? Yeah.
BTM, I think I missed the last sentence though. Can you
Oh,
repeat that?
yes. I was asking, how long do you take to cast your actors? And what was
Okay.
your process like, in terms of finding whether they are suitable?
Okay. Yeah. These particular roles, the older man is something that we've been looking for like for years, and we cast the younger one first, but we cannot confirm anyone because we need to find the older one first and to see if they can match and they can fit the roles.
Mm.
So we went to some like famous actress. Some of them she just passed away just before we approached to her, and just like I say, it's a method acting style. So it's not only like for the actor herself to maybe she really like the script, but their children don't want their parents to be involved in this kind of project because it's like it's a tough one that you have to carry old guys like that. So it's hard to find it, and we got the name Tevirat from actually from the Thai Film Foundation, the director of the Thai Film Foundation. She recommended us some several names, including Tevirat, and it's the fact that her husband is a famous writer, and he's a writer specifically about nudity. So you can imagine that a guy who write about nudity, his wife gonna be really beautiful, right? So we approached to Tevirat by knowing that her husband is a famous writer about nudity, and she's like fearless about being nude on the screen. So that was starting everything, and when we confirm her, and then we can confirm the rest of the crews. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, because there's a certain, I think going back to, I think what you mentioned, documentary, kind of look, even when they are nude, that it was not sensual. It was very, it was just as a matter of life, as a matter of fact, kind of gaze. So yeah, I think they really put it off very well. And I think kudos to you and your casting team as well, to find all of them, right, for the film. Anatomy of Time is also, I think, history, right? I think you've included family history, in this film, as well as I think the social history and the political history, right, of what the country, what the society has gone through. It was set in a time, during the 70s, right? In what would in and Thammasat, right, was very involved, right, in that aspect of things, and you are now back, right, as a professor, right, teaching in the same university. So it was also very entangled, right, personal histories with social histories, and then what you're doing now, as well in terms of the space of where the revolution has happened, and how that part of the history also becomes something which is a memory, which became something where you have creative license, right, to imagine what you want it to be, not just what has happened. Yeah, I think it was such a fantastic work, and you've taken almost 5 years, right, to write, direct, and shoot and complete the film, right, for us. So yeah, a really big thank you, right, for sharing the film with us. And yeah, do you have any final words for our audience?
Well, I really enjoy the conversation. So thank you very much, and it gives a lot of space to to speak to the audience, and I think that this is wonderful.
And I hope that I think audiences who are moved, just like I think the Polish critic, by the film, will also be able to connect with you, right? I think now that we are very online these days, that you'll be able to receive, I think, the responses, after throwing a film at them, for them to come back with you, right, for their reactions. Yeah, and I hope that it will move a lot more people, when it get a wider release, both in Thailand as well as internationally. Yeah, and best luck, right, for tomorrow, for the awards as well. I hope your work will be recognized, right, by the jury too. So thank you very much for sharing so generously.